being built or, after it's built, that we get together as a region and just get together. Okay, what do you need help with? What are you struggling with? What can we do as a region to sit there and pool our resources, our smarts, to
Right.
say, okay, you know, this works over in Brevard. It may not work in Osceola, but let's try this. Have we tried that? And that'll be after, of course, talking to the prior EC and stuff like that, and seeing what their pitfalls are.
Right. So just let me interrupt here. I just realized that I made a tremendous mistake. I have not been live streaming until the last 2 minutes because what happens is I have a screen up and I look at it to make sure that there's no comments of anybody saying anything like, "Hey, your audio's dropped" and all that. And I realized that I had never actually clicked the live button. So we are actually now live. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go through, since I'm the host and I made this mistake, I'm going to go through and catch people up on this so that when anybody's watching at a later point, or if anybody jumps on the stream now, or, well, clearly I'm not catching anybody that's been on the stream because they couldn't have been. So let me just kind of get it back up, because otherwise if people come back, I've totally made this mistake. I didn't even realize it. Wow, it's embarrassing. It turns out I really do need a producer. So let's walk through it. So Brian introduced himself, and he's a former member of the United States Air Force, correct?
Yes, sir.
Part of EOD, Explosive Ordnance Disposal. We had a good laugh about my perspective of what it meant to be EOD. Watching, Danny Glover and I was hoping to get his name, drawing a blank on it, but watching characters on TV run after the last second, trying to figure out, should I clip the red wire or the blue wire, so on and so forth. And then we discussed that Brian has been the alternate rep, for Region 9, which covers Osceola, Brevard, Seminole, and Orange. Osceola, they disaffiliated recently as of October, because the chair just was like, look, I'm burnt out. There's too much going on. And it's been 5 years, and they have about 400 people there. So what we've been discussing, is, for anybody that's tuning in at a later date, what we've been discussing is kind of like the leadership of what might need to happen in Region 9 for getting Osceola back up. And so what Brian was talking about was some of the things that they were doing in Brevard, and saying, hey, look, we've engaged in various forms of communication, reaching out to people. And so my recent question was literally just to kind of say, like, hey, okay, that's great. Those are awesome things. You're clearly involved in Brevard. And in Brevard, you have a certain level of people that are already present to engage and do certain things. However, you don't necessarily have that in Osceola, because there's no meeting. There are no people that have said, I will fulfill this role, or I'm in this affiliate ready to do the work of the affiliate. You just have people that might want to have an affiliate, or people that might be willing to join an affiliate if there was one. So the question was like, how does the work that he's been doing translate? Because what Brian is doing is he's saying, I'm going to put my hat in the ring for Region 9, the primary, not the alternate. So I think I've caught everybody up on all the primary stuff. So that was my quick rundown based on my particular failure. I do apologize. How absolutely embarrassing. So let's continue with that answer. And I think you might have been answering that as I clicked go live. So let's kind of start back up there. So how does that translate? And is it going to be the big challenge that I think it is?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a challenge. I think the translating, and like I started saying, was we're going to use the affiliates around it. So we'll see if Brevard, Orange, and Seminole will help us sort of get that Osceola back up and running.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is, of course, after I talked to the prior, EC, and say, hey, one, find out if they're interested in doing that, whatever position it is again, and two, okay, what worked and what didn't work in your eyes,
Mm-hmm.
and then taking all that information, and then maybe gathering some help from the other affiliates, and then going down to Osceola and saying, hey, let's see if we can do this, and actually, sort of taking the temperature of the water
Mm-hmm.
to see if it's a viable option.
Right.
It may not be viable. I'm
Right.
not saying it is or isn't, but my goal my goal as the region will be to get Osceola a good, strong affiliate again. I'm not saying the past one was not strong. It's just,
Right.
see if we can get that membership up again.
Gotcha. So let's talk. I love concrete goals. And as I mentioned a moment ago, before we actually went live, unfortunately, um, people have a tendency to come up with goals that aren't very concrete. So when you say strong, what you might think of as strong, I might think of as strong, maybe two different things. So what do you
Hmm.
mean? Like, how am I gonna how will people look back later and say he built a strong EC according to what he intended to do? What does that mean concretely?
Yeah, I would say, one is getting the EC built again, you know, um, and then, finding those volunteers. I know that, that it's been tried before
Hmm.
in the last of EC. But the first and foremost thing is finding people that want to do it,
Hmm.
and two, expanding on that. So I would say if you have an EC and then you have, maybe 10 people showing up to their, you know, to a social event by June,
Right.
to one social event, have 10 people. Let's say we get the affiliate up and running, and then you have 10 people coming to that first social.
Right.
I think that's a start. Um, and then by the end of the year, maybe you have instead of just the EC, you have 8 people coming to a meeting,
Hmm.
to your business meeting, and then maybe 20 people. So, stagger those and make those numbers a little realistic.
Right.
Again, that would be after talking to the prior EC and see what they were getting, their actual numbers, what they were
Gotcha.
getting before that. So,
Gotcha.
and then I
Because
would
you're
base it off that.
gotcha. So you're going to start with what were you doing?
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Because when I became chair of Duval, I did some of the goals that I had didn't really have metrics to work from, right? At
Hmm.
least we didn't really keep track of them.
Hmm.
And so, like, because some of the things that I wanted to do, I don't, and it's not dogging anybody, just we weren't doing them at that particular time. So
Hmm.
because we weren't doing these things, it was like, well, what's the measurement of us achieving this goal?
Hmm.
And I have a tendency to be, uh, when I come up with goals, to buy, to take a platter instead of a plate, right? I'm just like, all right, we're gonna
Hmm.
do all of this,
Hmm.
and then it turns out that that was way too much to bite off, and
Hmm.
I'm very notorious for it. But it was interesting because me personally, I tried to temper that, but then I made sure they were all concrete. And then just recently in December, I was just like, all right, here's what I achieved, here's where I failed.
Hmm.
And I said failed in the sense of I told you this number, I didn't deliver this number.
Hmm.
And I personally believe that there are reasons why I didn't, like that were not my fault per se. But I look at it and I say, at the end of the day, I am responsible for it. And it's a failure of leadership to say I'm going to deliver these things and then not deliver it for one reason or another. Not always for the same reason. It's not like you failed to do it. Maybe you failed to really consider the goal in the first place and you made it too difficult. Maybe that was the failure, right? So I think it's really good that you're going
Yeah.
to speak to the previous one, because if there's information that you can get that will help you in identifying,
Hmm.
that way you can tell people like, hey, based on the numbers, I'll make it up. Based on the numbers, I'm going to look for 5 people at the end of the year that are actively coming every month, right? Let's just say that was it, right?
Hmm.
Because maybe the former chair says we went a whole year and only had 3 people show up at any given meeting, with the
Hmm.
exception of a few guests sporadically, and we didn't keep track of them,
Hmm.
right? So maybe he says that, right? And so then that tells you like 15 might be too high. You
Yeah.
might be asking to tell people later I didn't deliver 15.
Hmm.
So yeah, I no, I think that's good. Um, so what kind of
Yeah. Can I
things?
say something?
Yeah, absolutely. Dive right in.
As far as your thing is, I don't, I can understand setting the metric because I have the same thought process
Hmm.
of of failing to meet your goal.
Mhm.
But I don't think that's poor leadership. I don't know if that's what you meant. I think it becomes poor leadership when it's glossed over, when the
Okay.
leader doesn't acknowledge that that,
Fair
hey,
enough.
that, I would say that you're a good leader if you sat there and said, hey, we shot for this goal, right?
Mhm.
We pushed. I think I could have done, and then you reanalyze, well, I could have done this and this better, and maybe that would have got us to the goal.
Right.
Let's not make that mistake again. I
Right.
think that's good. Now, if it's, I think you get into bad leadership when you set that goal and then you keep the goal the next year, but don't do anything different.
Right.
I've from what I've seen throughout my military and even non-military and my
Mhm.
civilian, that's what happens is
Right.
that, you know, well, we're going to keep the same goal. Well,
Right.
that's that's a bad
Right.
idea. You know, I am along with you. I would acknowledge my failures. In fact, I'm probably too far on that side where I don't like taking credit for anything that goes good. I would rather give it to the team. I would
Right.
rather have them get the credit for that stuff because they're probably the ones doing most of the work.
Right.
It's the leader that normally catches the glory, but then if you're a bad leader, you deflect all the bad stuff on your rest of your team.
Right.
Where I'll take the hit for if we don't make a mark, man, that was my failure. I did that.
Right.
But this is what we're going to do to change that and make it and improve it.
Yeah. No, I do agree with you. My thinking was when I was younger, I might make a goal and then not achieve that goal. And then later say when somebody says, well, how come you didn't achieve it? Kind of shove off the responsibility and say, well, it's
Yeah.
not my fault because,
Hmm.
I didn't know that that not enough people were coming in the first place and how
Hmm.
difficult it would be.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and, so now I look at it and I say, if you're going to make a goal,
Hmm.
if there is information to acquire to help you
Hmm.
define that goal, you should. Now, if you're
Hmm.
making up a goal out of nowhere, then you definitely should aim a little bit lower. And then, but if you don't meet it, you still have told people that you were going to, so you should own it, right? You should say like,
Hmm.
hey, I said that I was going to have 30 people come to this meeting,
Hmm.
every, three times, three times out of the year, 3 months out of the year. And,
Hmm.
and then no months out of the year, 30 people came, right? Like that didn't sound right, but
Yeah.
and then turn around and go, well, it's not my fault that I didn't know we didn't have any way to contact everybody. Well,
Hmm.
no, it is your fault because you told people what you intended to do and they probably voted you in on that basis. So you owe
Hmm.
them that level of responsibility,
Yeah.
and that's what I was really getting at. It's
Yeah.
it's the failure in leadership from my view is that from start to finish is leadership. So from the very moment I think of a goal that I want to accomplish, that's when my leadership starts to the
Hmm.
point that I deliver it or don't deliver it, right?
Hmm.
And so anywhere in there is my particular failure, one reason or another, you
Hmm.
know. Um, if there's no libertarians in Duval and I say I'm going to start an affiliate and get 100 people, it's not really my fault there's no libertarians, but
Hmm.
it might be my fault for not being aware of that,
Hmm.
and then telling
Hmm.
everybody I'm going to have this really huge goal. So that's what I was getting at. So,
Hmm.
but I do appreciate you pointing that out. I think it's good. I think these kind of leadership conversations need to happen, and I think people need to say, well, let's be more clear about this, or I kind of disagree with you. Like
Hmm.
that's how we get the best, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
So, all right. So let's move on. You're going to be aiming to improve Osceola, or I'm sorry,
Hmm.
to affiliate Osceola. What
Hmm.
about the other three counties? What kind of things are you looking to do there?
So I've thought about that even before your invite onto the show.
Hmm.
I think the big thing is just to see how they work.
Okay.
So, are they tracking some of those metrics? Are they tracking how many libertarians they have in there? How are they reaching out to them? Have they
Hmm.
tried something different? And it's not to tell them what to do, but it's for me to sit there and say, okay, well, let's just say you have 2,000 libertarians in Seminole.
Hmm.
Okay, well, how many people do you have come to meetings? Are they are they donating? Do you have recurring donations? Do you do
Mm-hmm.
socials? How many people do you have attend those things? And then, that becomes a conversation between the region rep and then the affiliate.
Mm-hmm.
First off, do you want my help?
Right.
I'm here to help. I'll do what you want, to help improve. And then I'll be your voice to the LPF on as far as the EC is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
I said, but one, do you want my help? Yeah. Okay. Two, what can I do to help you?
Right.
Something that I talked to one of the affiliates already about, but I'm going to talk to the other ones about is a quarterly sort of report card of how we're doing in each one of the affiliates. So we'll pick a couple of measurements and I'll get their input on that of what we're going to pick, and then say, okay, well, how do we think we're doing? What's your goal? Have you met your goal? Are you going your path goal? How do we improve those things? And go from there. I think, like you're talking about, if you want a goal, you have to be able to measure something.
Right.
Unfortunately, there are some goals that can be pie in the sky. You have your vision statement, but then anything below that should support that one
Right.
or two vision statement.
Yep.
So then how do you get to those things is where it really comes down. So,
Mm-hmm.
and then, reaching out, and then, like I said, cross communication between the affiliates has to happen. Orange should be talking to Brevard, should be talking to Seminole, should be talking to Osceola. So, like I said, I'll go to the meetings, probably try and generate some sort of quarterly report so we can track all those stats. And then the third thing is I'll probably have a quarterly where we'll meet in one central location and just, I'll see as many as the affiliates can show up as possible. And we'll sit there and we'll just chit chat. Hey, what can I do for you? Here's what's happening sort of at the LPF. What do you think about this?
Right.
What do you want to change? Is there something you want me to bring up at the LPF that we can change together and maybe work
Right.
it out and come up with the best idea?
Right. Nice. So that sounds great. And I don't think I have any further questions. It sounds like you've put a lot of thought into the Region 9 rep role. And I do see that you are on the convention committee as well,
Yes, sir.
and you're the vice chair. Now, before we talk about that, I have an interesting question. You may
Okay.
be the first person, I'm trying to think back, the first person that only has 2 roles. So several of the other people are like an officer in their affiliate. They're on multiple committees. They're in it. They're on the EC looking for either the same role or a different role. And I've questioned that to them, because I'm like, to me that sounds like a lot, but I do know that there are people that can do a lot. We see that out there. That there are people that just seem to handle it very well, and then there are other people they can barely handle one role. So tell me why up front, why it is that you're only fulfilling 2 formal roles right now.
Well, I'll be honest with you, because when I was the chair at the end of the year, after I became the Region 9 rep and stuff like that, I couldn't focus on all 3 and give the effort that I wanted to.
Okay.
I started to focus on Region 9, which sort of took me away from doing stuff for the Brevard affiliate. And then I became one of the, and then I did more on the convention committee. So I didn't want to spread myself so thin to where I couldn't give my best effort for each one of the positions. I have a fear. When I say fear, I don't want to become someone that's on 5 committees, because in my opinion, multitasking doesn't work. If you can do 2 committees, or 2 positions, that's probably the best in my humble opinion. I just, it's hard to keep all the hats and everything balanced with all that stuff. So I wanted to focus on just 2.
Gotcha. And I don't ask that to surreptitiously kind of dog on anybody else. I do think that there are some people that just for one reason or another can handle multiple roles. And then I'm not one of them. And I think a lot of it is knowing yourself, knowing who you are and what you can handle. And, so I think it's, my wife will tell everybody, she'll say, when he's focused on something, he's focused on one thing. And sometimes to the absolute exclusion to other things,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And so for me, like it would be an absolute terrible idea to be on, 3 committees and 2 roles. Like it
Mm-hmm.
would be a terrible idea. And if
Mm-hmm.
somebody were to interview me, they would have so much ammo to ask me tough questions like, how come you
Mm-hmm.
didn't do this on roll 1 and 2
Mm-hmm.
and 3 and 4 and 5? Like,
Yeah.
why is it you were so weak in everything? Like this is what would happen to me. But I do acknowledge that
Well,
some people can do it.
yeah.
But I think it's fewer than most.
Yeah, I would say there are definitely people that have the time and have the energy and have the expertise. It's not just about, wanting to do it. It's having an expertise. You have to
Right.
have a certain type of mind and a
Right.
mindset to do that. And I think in my younger days, I probably could have, but
Hmm.
now I can't. I'd like to focus on one or two things,
Gotcha.
and when I'm doing that, that's what I do. So,
Gotcha.
so yeah.
Got it. So let's swing back to the convention committee. Um, what's your role there? And I know that there's not like, I mean, you're the vice chair, but I know that everybody kind of like there isn't a formal necessarily role that everybody like this is what you do. But what are the things that you've been doing and responsible for on the convention committee?
Uh, and I don't say this lightly, and this is not to denigrate anybody else, but I've been doing pretty much a lot.
Okay.
Uh, but what I tried to do is because Brian Stevens is the chair,
Hmm.
he's had a couple things come up. So what we try to do is we tried to decentralize the committee. Christina Baxter has done a ton
Hmm.
to help out the convention committee. She handles all the speakers, so she's the one that talks to everybody as far as speaking roles and stuff like that.
Hmm.
I helped organize while I was building the schedule. We came up with the speakers together. I wanted a wide array of libertarians. I didn't want just one section, or one caucus, however you want to put it. I didn't want one mindset. I think we need to have a full breadth of personalities. And then I helped come up with some of the breakout sessions.
Okay.
I picked it. It's obviously in Brevard, so I found the location for it.
Hmm.
I got the contract. I'm an intermediary with the hotel, so I handle all the questions for the hotel as far as rooms and stuff like that. So
Okay.
um, I wouldn't say there's, I got my fingers in a lot of stuff,
Gotcha. Okay.
and and that's what and that's why I haven't done a lot of Region 9. I talked to the person. I said I won't, I'll come to meetings and stuff like that, but once I get this convention thing done, that's when I can put my full, more of my focus on
Okay.
Region 9 stuff. So, but yeah, uh, I've done a lot. But again, I'll say again, it's a team effort. Brian
Hmm.
Stevens has done a bang up job, and Christine's done a bang up job, and also John Morrissey. He's in charge of our vendors, so he's out there looking for people. So we've done a really really good, as best we
Gotcha.
can in a short amount of time. So
Are you pretty excited about the speakers that we have?
yes, yeah,
Okay.
I
So
am.
let me ask you then. We've got at least one that can, in some circles, be considered a lightning rod, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Um, so I guess the question is, why would we, you know, in a time where the LP and the LP, maybe not the LPF so much, but the LP in general,
Hmm.
seems to be in this tussle over personalities. Why would we want to bring in one of those personalities that has been kind of central, like one of those lightning rods? And I'll be very specific because I don't think that he will mind. I'm talking about Dave Smith, and
Hmm.
I have nothing against it. I like Dave Smith. I think he's a good guy personally, and I'm not necessarily even questioning the decision.
Hmm.
What I'm thinking of is I've heard people kind of like been upset that maybe Dave Smith is getting speaking engagements at the different LP
Hmm.
conventions, right? And I know that in contrast, LP Texas, they brought in this Vosh fellow, which I'm not terribly familiar with, but apparently
Hmm.
he identifies as a libertarian socialist, but a lot of people
Yeah.
in on his behalf identify him as a communist, right?
Hmm.
And so, but he's a lightning rod as well, but on the other
Hmm.
side of the extreme, if you will.
Hmm.
And So, and some, but it's funny, the people that were happy to see his name on the dais were also the ones that were unhappy to see like Dave's name, and vice
Hmm.
versa. Not entirely, but
Hmm.
there's a good handful of people on both sides that were just like, and um and then you might have some people in the middle that are just like, do we really, like we've got Larry Sharp coming. I don't really know too many people that like he doesn't seem to be a lightning rod.
Hmm.
So why is it a good idea for our affiliate to have someone that see as a lightning rod come to speak at our event?
Yeah. I mean, my response to them is why not? I
Hmm.
mean, I know he's a lightning rod, and I know he had, I'll be honest with you. I've tried to follow some of the stuff that people say bad about him,
Right.
um, and I I can't understand it. I can't wrap my mind around, well, are you just parsing part of his speech and then, saying, well, now he's a this or that?
Hmm.
Um, I personally wanted to see him in person. I want to meet him in person. I want to hear him in person because
Hmm.
you can watch him online on YouTube and stuff, and you'll get some stuff. But I think if it's more personal like that, maybe you can change some minds about him. Maybe you don't. Maybe you go the other way. But I think we should give him the opportunity to. I think we should give almost any libertarian the opportunity to come to Florida and speak their mind, and then people can judge for themselves.
Right.
I've heard also a lot of people, I don't like Dave Smith. Okay, but what about Justin Amash? What about Spike Cohen? What about Tasha
Right.
Cohen? What about Larry Sharp?
Right.
What about all the great, what about yourself? What about all the great breakouts? So you're gonna sit there and say, I'm not gonna come to the convention for just because Dave Smith is there. I find that to be a little disconcerting, especially from libertarians.
Hmm.
To be honest with you, I wouldn't I wouldn't not go to something because of one person uh, that may say something that offends me. I may even spend more money, more time researching and listening and learning
Right.
why they're doing those things.
Right.
So I personally, I'll be honest with you, I personally was pushing for Dave Smith for that reason,
Gotcha.
um, because one, he is a lightning rod, but he's a name in the Libertarian Party.
Right.
Everybody's saying he's going to go in to run for president and stuff like that. Well, you know, maybe I make my decision on how I feel about him at this convention rather than on his podcast or something like that.
Right.
Does that make sense?
No, I do agree. And I think that anytime you can interface with somebody more, you are better off. And I've tried
Hmm.
it, the one thing I find very concerning about the Libertarian Party is there a lot of people will want to write somebody off. And then I ask him, I'm like, have you had a chance to talk with them? Did you go shake their hand? Did you go and say, hey, let's sit down and have coffee,
Hmm.
have a beer or whatever?
Hmm.
And I get a lot of excuses,
Hmm.
you know, when the answer's no. I get a
Hmm.
lot of excuse. Well, I was with people that are offended by him. I was, I don't spend my time with and I'm like, but you're spending a lot of time being angry at this person,
Hmm.
and you're spending a lot of time vocalizing against this person. And
Hmm.
for me, I think I I am firm that eyeball to eyeball handshake, where appropriate, I think that there's no substitute for that.
Hmm.
And that often, and I've personally found that when I sit down with somebody that I might think of a certain way, it's very rare that I walk away feeling the same way about that person as when I started. If I
Hmm.
if I did it genuinely, I mean, if I just go
Hmm.
there just to try to back them in a corner to say what I think they should say or whatever, then yeah, a lot of times I'll walk away feeling like, oh yeah, they're still that loser that I thought they were.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm always on the side of more interaction. And
Hmm.
most of the time that I've seen, most of these personalities, I can't account for them all, but they've been fairly available to people to talk to,
Hmm.
and even some people that are lesser known,
Hmm.
but still have a bit of a name.
Hmm.
I think of myself as lesser known, but a small itty bitty little name in the libertarian community. And,
Hmm.
when I go to events, I'm there and anybody can come up and talk to me. And sometimes I usually try to go up and talk to people, especially if I've had some conflict with them online, because I want to
Hmm.
know who is the real person, not
Hmm.
who is the person that I met online that may feel entirely different.
Hmm.
Right. So, but I was just
Well,
curious. Yeah.
when you
About,
when you're
lighting around.
behind the
Go ahead.
when you're behind the camera or when you're behind the computer, it's completely different from, going up and meeting that person, even as, celebrities and so on and so
Hmm.
forth.
Hmm.
Um, they may say stuff that you don't like, online or
Hmm.
via stuff, but then you go up and you talk to them and you start talking to them and you go, and then you can ask them, maybe, not to back them in the corner, but just say, hey, I don't understand this. I'm trying to understand. Can you, blah, 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 blah. I know I've done that a couple times, or I do that a lot, especially with libertarian stuff, because I've, I'm really new to it and I'm still reading books.
Hmm.
Um, but I ask questions so I can get their ideas. And normally I can work out what direction they're going, or why they're saying that, or why they're
Right.
doing it. And
Right.
then that'll help me be a better person and libertarian later on.
Right. So, would you be are you familiar with the Vosh character that I was telling you about?
There's a Facebook thing called Libertarian Party Discussion,
Yeah.
and it was him and one other guy, and I'm like, who the hell is Vosh? So I went and I listened to 10 or 15 minutes of his podcast,
Hmm.
and I'll have to go back and listen to more, because the one that I listened to did not sound libertarian to me.
Okay.
Uh, but like I said, I'll have to do more research
Gotcha.
on that, because I know it says on his thing, socialist libertarian, I think is what it says, and I'm like, that doesn't even make sense to me. I don't,
Right.
you know,
Sure.
it doesn't make sense to me.
Fair
So,
enough. So
um,
even though so you're a supporter of Dave Smith, so we kind of know where he stands on many issues, and Vosh probably is polar opposite. I don't know if that's an exact precise word, but if people felt like he had something to contribute to the libertarian sphere, you'd be as willing to hear him out at a convention as you would Dave Smith.
yeah, and I'm not. That's not correcting you, but I'm not really a Dave Smith fan. I want to know more.
Okay.
I've watched maybe two of his episodes, his podcasts, but
Okay.
I've seen all the discussions on
Yeah.
the libertarian boards as far as Dave Smith, and I'm like, really? The ones that I listened to, that's not what I heard. That's not the person that I heard. As far as his feelings that he puts through the computer and through his media and stuff. I've heard him a couple times, and I think he has a strong messaging platform, but it's not as bad as that I've seen.
Right.
Again, this is personal experience. So
Right.
that's why that's why I want him here, is because, like I said, I want to meet him. I want to hear him uh, in person,
Right.
and see how he interacts with people. And I think that's a big telltale sign of who they are, and
Gotcha.
if they're just espousing libertarian beliefs, or are they actually acting on them.
Gotcha. Yeah, and don't mind. I generally try to stay away from names on the show.
Yeah.
It's a popular name, so I figure like, hey, in this particular case, since we're talking about a convention and we're talking about having invited somebody, let's kind of
Yeah.
talk about that lightning rod element
Hmm.
of it, right? But
Yes, sir.
overall, you're comfortable. You're very happy with the dais that we have of people that are coming to speak, and it sounds like you look at it from the perspective of we are a big tent. Here is a good reflection of that big tent.
Hmm.
And I think there's some truth there, right? Like there's a limited space for all the speakers,
Hmm.
but I think that you've got Larry Sharp, you've got Spike Cohen. Well, Spike Cohen and Dave Smith have not always agreed. They just recently had a debate um, on the matter of open borders, right?
Hmm.
So they had that debate, and I know that Dave Smith had for a while been a bit of a critic of him with Spike attending BLM, protests and
Hmm.
whatnot. A lot of people actually, had, and I'm not terribly. I know who Larry Sharp is. I've seen some of his stuff. comparatively to the other two, where they stand on certain issues, I'm not entirely certain. But he
Hmm.
seems like, from what I remember, it seems like he might be more toward the middle of both of those gentlemen. But
Hmm.
then even some smaller names, like, right, like we've got Andrea Holt coming
Hmm.
from Georgia, and she's with People for Liberty, and I've talked with her personally, and I know that she has some disagreements about, even with me, some things, right?
Hmm.
And we'll actually, like, myself, her, Clint Russell, and then Dave Smith are all going to be on a panel,
Hmm.
talking about uh, our perspective of messaging. And I think
Hmm.
that's going to be an interesting panel. I think that there's going to be four unique perspectives. We'll agree in some areas, but I think there'll be some uniqueness there. So I
Hmm.
do agree. I think that there has been some, um, uh, not has been, I think there is some, a good variety of people.
Hmm.
So let me ask you, is there anything that you wish you could have made happen for the convention that just wasn't in the cards? Not necessarily people shut it down, just it wasn't in the cards, like it wasn't right for this time, person was unavailable. You don't have to name names or anything, just curious.
Yeah, I'll tell you the one thing that we struggle with the convention that's really frustrating me, and maybe we change it up 2023, is the breakouts in relation to business.
Mhm.
Because, yes, this whole convention is about business. It's about getting business done and
Right.
stuff like that. But trying to weave breakouts, especially on Saturday where it's going to be business heavy,
Mhm.
trying to weave breakouts and make time for that, I think it takes away from from both sides, from the
Mhm.
business and from the breakouts. Um, I would say that is the most, and communication with the speakers,
Right.
which Christina's handled, thank goodness, because I
Right.
think I would have probably lost my shit. Um, um, but that whole part is, it's um it's a little frustrating because you
Mhm.
want to make it sort of like you were talking about before. You want to make it fun, but it is business.
Right.
So you gotta bounce that work hard, play hard type of thing.
Right.
Um, and that's difficult to do. So one of the things I'm going to bring up, I've already talked to a couple people about it, but I know National's doing it this year. Is that we do Friday is all the breakouts,
Mhm.
and we have all those Friday, and then we may have one breakout or two breakouts on Saturday, and then speakers, and that's it. Of
Gotcha.
course, with business. So to maybe cut that off. I mean, the bad part is that people would have to take Friday off
Mhm.
from work, but but if we're better at planning, which we will be this year or this next year, that's not going to be as much of a concern because we'll have all that settled way before. Way before. Well, if I hit my goal, we'll have the convention space for 2023 already by March or April.
Mhm.
So
Gotcha. So are you planning to be on the convention committee again, if you
yeah, I'm
can?
going to lead. I'm going to chair it.
Oh, nice. Awesome. All right, then. So let me ask you, two conventions ago, there was a lot of consternation, because things just kind of, I don't want to say they dropped, but we had, an issue with the the cost, and I think we ended up losing some money, and there was a lot of arguments about
Hmm.
who did what, and people
Hmm.
were really angry. People that did a lot of work were angry. People that were observing were angry, and there's just there's a lot of tempers flare. And I remember I even got into it with people that were not even in the party, and they were trying to talk smack, and I was like, well, do you know this? Do you know that? And they didn't know it. And I'm like, well, if you don't know, and I think one of the questions I asked, I was like, what was the stated goals of the
Hmm.
convention? They're like, well, I don't need to know the goals. And I'm like, well, if you don't know the goals, then how do you know it was a terrible convention?
Hmm.
What was the stated budget? What was the budget for it? Well, I
Hmm.
don't, I'm like, okay, again, if you don't know what the budget was, then how can you say that, how can you talk so definitively about the failures that we had?
Hmm.
So we improved the next year, right? And so over time, we've made some improvements, right, since that. So what kind of things do you feel have laid the groundwork for a better convention in 2023? Because I think that we should always be like, can't wait till 2023 because whatever we
Hmm.
did this time is
Hmm.
going to lay the foundation for really knocking out of the park next time, right? And just
Hmm.
keep that momentum.
Hmm.
So what kind of things have laid the groundwork to knock it out of the park in 2023?
Well, the first thing is getting the location that first of the year. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we can't, we've made a mistake this the last 2 years, uh, and we've we've waited until 5 months prior to the convention, even 4 months.
Oh, wow.
Excuse me. And then we have it selected, and then we're like, holy cow! Now we have to jump through hoops, all these hoops, flaming hoops,
Mm-hmm.
all these flaming hoops, in order to make sure the convention's on pace and stuff like that. So I know that we started a really good plan with this last convention committee, and then we had a complete meltdown a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so this year, I'm going to follow through with the convention committee, and it's going to be setting goals and setting. We're going to sit down together and set goals. But one of my first goals is selecting the spot, because that's key to starting off good, is having that spot selected by April of
Okay.
2022. Um, and then it'll be selecting a theme. I know the theme contest. I don't know if you heard about
Yeah, that
it.
one caused a little controversy. We don't
Yeah,
need to rehash that.
yeah.
Everybody
No,
knows it. We're there, we're done, we're moving on.
yep. No, but my idea is maybe we take a year off from letting everybody donate money for that. We'll see. We'll see how the EC
Hmm.
feels on that. And that we just come, we ask people for suggestions. Okay, we give suggestions, then we select it, and the EC says, yes, I like this one.
Didn't that raise a
Okay,
lot
we're
of
gonna go
money
with that
though?
one. Well, I don't know, the money that we earned, or the money we had to give back.
So, okay. Because okay, fair enough. We'll leave it there.
So yeah, it did raise money, and I'm not saying it's not a viable cost, but how much is the money worth the pain, and or pain in the neck, or the pain in the head? Maybe it is. And if we were going to do a theme contest where we're paying for it, my idea is to have it more like a playoff system rather than a one and done. So there'll
Hmm.
be rounds that they make it through a round, and then they go forward, and then you have a head to head.
Gotcha.
Again, that comes down to planning, though, and
Hmm.
saying 6 months out, we're having the thing costs starting here. This is what do communications, what do you need from us?
Okay.
Fundraising, what can you do to do, to hype this up?
Right.
That's one of the things I think that we'll improve upon, is communications in between the committees from convention to everybody else.
Right.
Uh, yeah. So
Okay.
those are the keys that I want. And just to make it simpler, because I know you talked about in your last one, some of this bureaucratic stuff that we have with the inside the party, um, it hampers it kills, it drudges the committees or people that really want to do good stuff. It sort of squeezes the life out of them sometimes.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I know we're coming up on our time, and I don't want to hold you up too terribly long, but I do have one final question. This is my fun question. I try to think of something absurd to ask, just for the fun of it. See where you're thinking, you know, and hopefully this particular question does not make or break your run, and people don't say to heck with him. I'm voting no to. Okay. So I know that there is some debate in the libertarian community about whether or not pineapple goes on pizza. Now, don't answer just yet. Just hold on for a second.
Okay. Okay.
So, people can keep having that debate. But what I think people are missing is whether or not pineapple should go in pizza rolls.
Uh-huh.
So, what I'm asking you is, should we put pineapple in pizza rolls, not on, because at least on pizza, if you and I
Uh-huh.
disagree, and
Uh-huh.
it comes with pineapple on it, I can at least take it off and, mostly enjoy it, right? For the most
Yeah.
part.
Uh-huh.
But if it's in the pizza roll, it's there. Like, that's
Mhm.
it.
Mhm.
So should pineapple go inside of pizza rolls?
Well, I mean, that leads me to a couple of questions to narrow down so I can answer your
Oh
question
boy.
specifically.
Now I'm in the hot seat. Oh
Yeah.
goodness. Oh
So
boy.
one, are the pizza rolls that have pineapple in 'em identified in any other way than the rest of the pizza rolls?
Let's go with yes. Let's go with we are not being fraudulent.
Okay. So I would say that if people want pineapple in their pizza rolls, they should have it as long as you have choice.
All right. All right. This is probably this is probably the most libertarian answer you could possibly give to this absurd question. So I'm going to give you a lot of props for that. Ryan, any final words before we close this out?
No, I just want to say thanks. Thanks for giving me your time. I know that you work hard at this stuff, and I've watched the last couple of interviews, and you've done a bang up job. And you know, I hopefully I don't your subscribers don't go down rather than up on this one.
I don't think so. I don't think that's going to happen. We don't have a lot of people watching just at the moment. Part of that's probably the Super Bowl. I think the other time is 4 o'clock is not the greatest time. And it just so happens, I was telling Hector on the last episode, I said, turns out when you offer to do interviews for the executive committee, you should probably offer that sooner than a month prior. Like that was a terrible idea. So I've had to like really scramble to try to make these happen. Right. And
so one last thing, I got one last thing.
Do it.
Go out and register for the convention. You're still able to buy packages. You're still able to, you can't get rooms. All the room blocks are taken. So, but there's still plenty of room for people to come out, and it's going to be a great convention, and we can't wait to see you there.
All right. Awesome. And with that, folks, Brian Fleming, Region 9 rep. So if you are in Osceola, Brevard, Seminole, or Orange County, and you are attending the LPF convention here on the weekend of the 25th, you know, reach out to him, talk to him, and see if he has earned your vote for when it comes time to vote for your region rep. Otherwise, we're going to call it a day on this episode. Brian, thanks for being on.
Thank you.
All right. That's all for this episode. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to hit that subscribe button and connect with me at LibertyDad on Facebook, LibertyDadPod on Twitter, or send me an email to libertydadpodcast@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. To catch Liberty Dad episodes when they air, head over to facebook.com/free speech media, where the weekly episode airs Monday night at 8 p.m. And while you're there, be sure to check out the other free speech media shows. Prefer an audio format? Then head on over to libertydad.com or just search for Liberty Dad, all one word, on your favorite podcast app. Remember, if you're a champion of liberty, your business is people and your product is liberty. Have a great week. Catch you next time, and I'm out.